First up, though, let's talk more about what's happened over the weekend and what could have happened in terms of that deal with the Wagner Group leader Prigozhin. With Tobias Ellwood, he's the Conservative MP and chair of the Defence Select Committee. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you once again for joining us. Very much appreciate it. Just in terms of your first response, really, to what happened over the weekend in terms of the attempted, mutiny and then some sort of deal being done.
Yeah, it has been quite incredible, huge implications for Ukraine, but more so for Russia. Wagner Group is this organization which Putin created in order to do his dirty work across the world, in Africa, in Sudan, stealing the gold from Sudan, for example, to pay for the war in Ukraine. The Ukraine war wasn't going well, but Putin kept telling his own people, it's all fine, nothing to see here. And it's the Wagner Group, it's Prigozhin who's actually spilled out the beans here and says this is actually going very, very badly. And I blame Shoigu and I want him out. For the Putin's most elite force to turn 180 degrees from Ukraine and head towards Moscow is quite incredible. I mean, you look on the map as to where he'd actually got to. He'd taken over the southern headquarters of Rostov. He was moving to Voronezh, and it was like, leaving Cardiff and getting to Reading before finally somebody gets on the blower and says, I'll do you a deal.
And meeting social resistance. And we've spoken to Ben Hodges, who used to be the commander of US forces in Europe. He's very much linked in to what is still going on in the American military and in NATO. And the fact that he was able to get so close and meet so little resistance, and so many of the Russian forces are actually now committed to Ukraine, shows that there is a vulnerability there. So, in terms of the deal that was done, what is the best belief of what the deal is done? Because one of the papers, or a number of the papers, reporting today this idea that it's not just a deal, might not just be money. We understand, the American and British and other intelligence were informed that something was going on. They believed this was going on. Did he just do a deal and say, well, this is what I'm being paid? 5 billion from you and I'll head off? Or was, as some reporting, were there threats, say, to Prigozhin and other Wagner leaders' families? Let's face it, you can all be the big strong man, but when someone is holding your daughter captive, you probably feel quite differently about it.
Well, big strong man, that's a useful phrase, because that's what keeps Russia going. Yeah. Go back to Ivan the Terrible. Russia's history is all about a lot of principalities arguing with each other and then getting attacked. That's what's happened in 2,000 years of Russian history. They've recognized they need a strong, powerful person backed by the Orthodox Church that everybody recognized, an authority, an authoritarian figure. And when that powerful person starts to lose power, very quickly things move to replace them. Yeah. So to see Putin, that spent 23 years consolidating his power, to have absolute control. So his, Moscow was coup d'etat proofs, so to speak, to suddenly find this own group going against him. And then he has to strike a deal. He can't even eliminate, he can't even exterminate the actual threat and the leader themselves. That shows Putin's vulnerability and his weakness, which is why many are saying, and I agree, that his days are numbered.
Well, this is it. It's coming on to what happens now, because a lot of people are saying, be careful what you wish for. A lot of glee at the weekend. Oh, yeah, Putin might be about to fall. And we've all been told Ukraine war isn't going to end until Putin falls. That's, he's not going to walk away with his tail between his legs because it would impact him. But a lot of people are saying, also, be careful what you wish for, because the alternative may be much, much worse, whether a civil war or someone backed by Prigozhin, a man who is renowned for his brutality, a man, who was imprisoned he spent 9 years behind bars for a brutal, brutal robbery. He's taken someone who's, a mutineer in his own Wagner Group and smashed him to a pulp by hitting him on the head with a sledgehammer. This is not a man that we can do business with.
Well, you're absolutely right. We simply don't know. But what we've seen is that this initial wound against Putin will mean that it's very, very volatile, very, very unpredictable. The textbook response usually is for the leader who's under threat to lock down on security forces, to introduce curfews, martial law and so forth, clamp down on public communications, messaging, the internet, blame international interference. That often is the case, and it's quite right that the West has been very cautious to make any comment on this at all. But he will be looking for dissenting voices in order to hold on to power. But as you've been implying, there are many stakeholders, from oligarchs to the FSB, the intelligence agencies and so forth, the army itself, which are now saying, hang on, this guy no longer feels in control. Yeah. And that's what usually happens. When the credibility, the legitimacy goes, then people are looking to vie for their own positions, who to back next for their own benefit.
I mean, that's the thing, and that's when we're going to get really worried about what the impact is in the war in Ukraine. Does he double down his efforts? Is he able to? But also, again, the knock-on impact of who controls nuclear weapons and whether or not someone backed into a corner or a rogue group get hold of nuclear weapons and press that button. This is where what happens in Moscow, or what happens behind those Kremlin walls, or even what happens in Ukraine, really does impact on us over here, doesn't it? Not just the economic sanctions and the cost of our energy bills. The impact on us could be devastating.
It's also shows the importance of back channels, which I'm afraid we had in the Cold War. We were able to work out and speak to people behind the scenes. Those aren't so strong anymore for us to actually understand what's going on. You make such an important point, well, two important points. Firstly, on Ukraine, that Putin will want to demonstrate that he is still in charge. So he'll probably launch some major missile attacks on Ukraine to demonstrate that the war is still worth pursuing. And then secondly, that he's in charge back at home. But there are nuclear weapons. This is a nuclear state. If there is civil war, if there's a breakdown in leadership and control, who might get control over those weapon systems? So much to consider here for the West. For Ukraine itself, very, very important that, when your opposition, your adversary is distracted, the morale of the Russian soldier, which is already low, will sink even deeper. The orders won't necessarily get through to the front line as to what to do. So certainly Ukraine should take advantage of that.
Yeah. Indeed. Can I also ask you about a non-Ukraine, non-Russian matter and talk to you about the Titanic sub? Of course, we saw the very tragic loss of life last week when the evidence that the sub had basically imploded. An investigation has been launched by the US Coast Guard to recover debris of the sub, but also look at whether civil criminal charges are going to be brought against Ocean Gate and others involved after the sub went down. A huge amount of resource went into looking for these 5 men in the hope that they were still alive, including a 19-year-old, Suleiman Dawood, which, I mean, it's utterly tragic. Do you think those resources should have gone into that search? And do you think this investigation will yield, in the end, some sort of criminal charge?
I don't know. That's for the investigator. I think it's right that an investigation takes place. Simply because I understand that the vessel was not certified. That should go through. There must always be lessons learned when there's a tragedy such as this, so hopefully we don't repeat it. I think there's some mystique about the Titanic itself that draws people to this, want to go and explore it in the first place, and then the international community wanting to then come out and help. The huge amount of resources for this, but we need to then, I think, place this in perspective. People wanting to go and visit a ship, which is really in a very, very dangerous place. The sea can be completely unforgiving. So I do hope that once the investigations have concluded, that we do have some better rules and standards that are put in place to hopefully prevent this from happening.
And we often learn these lessons, don't we? So whenever there's an airplane crash, the airlines will get together, the investigators get together. There is a lot of looking, what lessons can be learned and new rules applied. And it doesn't seem that have been quite so many rules applied in maritime. You're able to, you can't just launch a plane that hasn't been certified, can you? You're going to get prosecuted, and yet it was known that it's incredible the number of people who've got proof that they warned the owner of this vessel this was not seaworthy, this was not safe. And the number of people who said they were going to go on it and went, I don't think so, that doesn't look safe. And yet, we saw that loss of life and millions and millions of dollars spent in the search for those 5 men.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sad irony here, as you illustrate, that when the Titanic itself went down, it was not standard to have enough lifeboats on any seagoing vessel. And it took the sinking of the Titanic for international rules to be changed so that there is a lifeboat, a place of safety for every single passenger, not just half the passengers, as we saw, as the movie illustrated.
Very, very good point. Tobias, I would really appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much indeed for your time.